Hello, everyone. So thanks so much for joining us again today. This is our second monthly Hedera Engineering Insights webinar. My name is Brady Gentile. I'm on the product marketing team here at Hedera Hashgraph. And today we're joined by Donald Thibeau, who is Director of Product Management. And today we're going to be talking about some of the exciting things happening at Hedera with regards to engineering and product. Things like the 0.7.0 release of the services code base, the recent open sourcing of Hedera services, the bug bounty program that accompanies that open sourcing, some mainnet node updates, and then a live technical FAQ at the end of the session. So these webinars are really geared towards interactiveness with the community, and we encourage everyone to drop their questions into the Zoom platform, and we'll be sure to try and answer all of those by the end of the webinar. And I hope you enjoy today, and I'm going to pass things over to Donald.
Excellent. Thank you, Brady. As Brady mentioned, my name is Donald Thibeau, and I'm the Director of Product Management here at Hedera. And this is our second webinar, as Brady mentioned. And what is most exciting about this webinar is that it's the first, I believe, since we've open sourced our Hedera services code. So I'm going to start to use going forward on the webinars our documentation for a given release as really the guide for what we'll talk about. My hope is that you'll see this as an asset you can access, provide comments on, ask questions as needed. And we'll also make sure to do a quick review of some of those items that are included in this release. So just procedurally, if you haven't yet checked it out, our Hedera services repo is now open sourced at the github.com/hashgraph organization. So in that, not only can you see the services code, but also the issues that the engineering team is working on for the next version of the services, along with the release notes for each release. One thing that you're able and encouraged to do is open up issues on this repo as you hit any bugs, challenges, or issues. And our team will also do the best of our ability to respond to any questions you ask, either on a given issue for a bug you faced or just for additional detail about an upcoming feature or item you see in that issue. Last month, we also mentioned how this code is what's deployed also to the new preview net. So you'll see these tags are applied to different releases. And one of the benefits we've seen is that when this tag is applied to a given set of code as a release candidate, it would automatically then be updated to the Hedera preview net, where you can get early access to these new features, issues, and bugs. We won't always have the full documentation by that time, but we want to ensure that with the preview net, we're giving the community early access to different features coming down the pipe. Now, I'll give a quick overview of the 0.7.0 release, which was recently updated to the testnet and would be updated to the mainnet soon. The purpose of the release from a services perspective was to start delivering many of the components that will help us finally pull the switch on open review long-term, but also helping to move our mirror node strategy into the next phase. So many of the items delivered in this release, although they're a little bit under the sheets, help us to do things like move towards a full mirror node operation away from the beta, as well as to implement fixes, updates, and improvements at both the services and platform layer that will help us to eventually open review the code. So now I'll just walk through a few of some of the different enhancements you can see. And so for those of you who may not be as familiar with GitHub, how our documentation or our release notes will generally be structured is it will be an overview, a list of the enhancements with their associated issues, any key changes, bug fixes, and then of course a call out to our contributors who helped in the context of this release. So to call out a few of the different enhancements that we've included. First, we've updated the HCS topic running hash. So as I'm sure you're familiar, each topic ID in the Hedera consensus service has a running hash, which is updated with each subsequent message added to that topic ID or submitted against that topic ID. And so we've updated the method for calculating that running hash to now also include the payer account ID of who paid the transaction fee for that submit message. Second, we've also added features which support a zero stake node functionality. This functionality is designed to be our next iteration of the mirror node, moving towards a full mirror node that's more similar to a mainnet node. So you won't yet see any of these zero stake nodes on the public testnet or mainnet, but we put in place some of the code that will help that deployment be possible. So it'll likely be a staged rollout where first we have the code available, next we'll deploy some of these nodes in for testing, and then potentially allowing third parties to operate these nodes as well. And all of that is the next stage of what would eventually then be a full mirror node capability. We've added a few new stats to the platform that help with our internal monitoring and dashboarding as well as tooling. And then the last two items I'll mention is updating the Cypher suite for additional compliance with CNSA. And we also are changing the file writing for mirror nodes to 2 seconds on the mainnet. So this was a change that was made in the testnet a while back, and I believe we notified all the mirror node operators of, but certainly if you're running a mirror node, that's something to be aware of as well. There's just a few bugs just that we've mentioned here. Some of them are behavior related, such as what happens if a field is left empty, as well as adding validations for the total ledger balances when we're restarting the network. So helping to improve and reduce our update windows that you're seeing to update these networks. So that's just a quick walkthrough of some of these updates at the services side. Now, I'll also, of course, mention we have a whole host of work going on at additional layers of the stack. So we have the mirror node team is continuing to improve performance of the mirror node, as well as making that deployable via the Google Cloud platform. So if you're interested in running a mirror node, you can actually get it up and running today in Google Cloud. And get access via requester pays for the data to support that mirror node. Our SDKs on Java, Node.js, and Go have been progressing to support each of these features and are moving towards V2 for Java and Node.js and V1 for Golang. And so we'll publish the updated documentation and features in those once we have a visibility into timeline. And of course, I know there's a number of the community SDKs like the .NET SDK that are keeping right up as well. We've also built a few additional demos I'll mention. So you can see content for implementing a Hedera consensus service-based stablecoin. There's a demo for prevention of theft in the context of a supply chain with the Hedera consensus service. And our documentation has also been staying up to date with the latest and greatest, both for the network as well as for the SDKs and associated samples with those SDKs. So now I think we'd love to, take any questions that you might have, or provide any additional insight into some of these features as needed. So let me stop share and see the Q&A. So first, I see two questions relating to tokenization. As I mentioned, Hedera really seeks to provide use cases that can be developed for a wide range of industries, geographies, and business models. Tokenization is certainly one that we've seen as interesting from both council members and different organizations building with Hedera technology. Our objective for tokenization is to support a multitude of different token issuance models. The first of which was the Solidity model using Solidity smart contracts. The second of which was our tokenization via the Hedera consensus service. Tokenization via the Hedera consensus service allows a high level of performance as well as a high degree of control over who operates the ultimate token network, how can that be accessed, as well as what the token actually represents, whether it's fungible or non-fungible. We are exploring more in terms of native tokenization. So you all may have seen some content that came out on that topic. And it's something that we're hoping to learn from our community about and also identify what requirements are where and what Hedera could potentially do to enable tokenization in additional forms beyond the Hedera consensus service. So if you or your organization is interested in these types of use cases, please do reach out to me either via a response to this webinar and the follow-up we send, or just reaching out directly to me on Discord. Now, I think the next question is about the Rust and C SDK. That currently is a community supported SDK, so I don't actually know off the top of my head the current state of it, but it's one that was, I believe, up to date through the Hedera consensus service at least. We also are looking to support SDKs which will target iOS. So we've been evaluating things like React Native support in the SDKs as well. So it's not something that we have a delivery date set for yet. And we'd certainly be open to any contributions that would support that function in the SDK. Finally, there was a question about purpose of zero stake nodes. I mentioned it earlier in the webinar as it's the next iteration of moving towards full mirror nodes. So I'm sure you can catch that full detail in the recording, but that is the reason for incorporating that code. I don't see any other questions currently, but I know Brady has a few updates as well, and I'll keep an eye on the Q&A as I turn it back over to him.
Thanks, Donald. It actually looks like there's one more that came in through the chat rather than the Q&A around updates on state-proof implementations.
Great. So we are seeking to first deliver a beta version of the state proof in the coming weeks that will allow a proof to be constructed for a given transaction on the network. So keep an eye out for additional documentation on the blog about how that can be done. And many of the changes that we're implementing in the platform today, such as bug fixes and additional consensus fixes, are what will enable the full state proof to be built as well. So that's something that's still in our roadmap, but we don't have a target date for yet. There's another question about the state of a Coinbase Rosetta implementation. I'll mention on this item that Rosetta is a model, an open source model that defines a simple set of APIs that exchanges can use to interface with networks in a standardized way. So we've been exploring how to align our specifically mirror node APIs to that Rosetta implementation. So that's something that our team has been exploring as a standard exchange agnostic way to support a common set of functions. So you can keep an eye on some of that work in the context of the mirror node. There's now a question I see about staking. So that is something that we're likely looking at in terms of next year. We don't have a firm or rough ETA really on when that will be, but again, it's dependent on many of some of the things that we've been building and implementing into the service over the past couple of releases. And I see one more question about our hopes in the world of DeFi. And I could talk all day about things Hedera would like to see happen in the world of decentralized finance, but ultimately I think it's more important to call out some of the things that the community is doing, because decentralized finance is inherently decentralized. And so our hope is that it's through users and developers like yourselves that this use case will be realized. So I know we have organizations like Hashing Systems who have been exploring models for HBAR issuance onto different networks in the form of wrapped HBAR. We had a company as part of the hackathon who also supported that type of interoperability. So a lot of those projects we see are really cool gateways to the broader decentralized finance ecosystem. And certainly, you know, if you have a use case or company in that space, we'd love to learn more and see how we can support you. There's a question about non-council nodes. There's not currently a timeline there. That's a decision that would be at the discretion of the council. And if and when that decision gets made, that's when we would talk about that process of non-council node operations. We see now, or I'm seeing a question now about collaboration with Polkadot and Substrate. Obviously, those are two different parts of the stack, so it's hard to give kind of one answer for both. We think Substrate is a pretty cool blockchain development framework, and would love to support integration with the Hedera consensus service to that framework. But that's something that, you know, not directly being worked on now. I see now a question about recent testnet disruptions. So the testnet, as you all know, gets code deployed to it in advance of mainnet, and part of the reason is to surface what additional issues would come to fruition based on usage by a large number of developers. So over the past week or so, we did see some of those bugs that were based on, you know, some changes to the code itself. So it's been a great insight to help improve the stability of the code to help prevent any issues in those cases. I'll say you'll also see it as a little less stable because it's only 4 nodes versus the mainnet, which is much more decentralized and resilient. But that's something we may consider changing in the future to add some additional nodes to the testnet. There's now a question of how many nodes are running on the consensus service. Maybe just for a bit of familiarity, nodes are operated by Hedera governing council members today. So as new council members join Hedera, they will stand up their node in an on-premise or cloud data center of choice. I believe there's 15 nodes today. And again, that just increments and increases with each additional council member. There's a question about what % of the team is working on what. That would be, frankly, just kind of estimates. We've got the bulk of our team focused on the platform and services, which is really the core of the network software. And then we've got a growing team who's working on both the mirror node and supporting the mirror node ecosystem, as well as developer tools, SDKs, demo applications that help make the use of all of what's below easier. So it's hard to give exact percentages, but those areas are really where our team is focused. I see next a question here about updates on Hyperledger Avalon, and I'm not sure what TEs are, but assuming that might be TEEs, which are trusted execution environments. That is a model for application development we've looked at through the context of some Hyperledger projects. It's not been an immediate focus just because we haven't seen a huge demand for us to build components of that into our technology. But as with everything, if this is of interest to you, you know, please reach out to me or anybody else on our team, and we can learn a little bit more about the requirements and see what we can do to support things like Avalon and TEEs. There's a question next about interoperability. So as I think everybody here knows or hopefully has heard of before, the Hedera consensus service currently integrates with a number of different permission frameworks like Hyperledger Fabric and R3's Corda, which is in one way interoperability with those different private networks. We think long-term that can be a path to easing interoperability between those private networks. and we've certainly seen some interest in the context of proof of concepts there. We've been exploring interoperability with other chains from a token perspective, but it's still a bit early days, so not much more to share there. I see a question here about experience level of the team. It's probably hard to estimate, but as I'm sure many of our team members can tell you, we have quite an intensive interview process from both a technical and every other perspective. So we've got an incredibly talented team from PhDs, different coding backgrounds with large technology companies, as well as different educational backgrounds. So we've got a great, but I think more importantly, diverse team that's been working on systems like Hedera for quite a while. I think the next question I see is generic appnet support for self-sovereign identity. That is primarily what we're hoping to enable through our DID SDK. So with the DID SDK, you can build a permission network which establishes credentials for a specific organization or network of organizations and people. So that DID SDK is a great tool to get started building that generic self-sovereign identity network. I see there's a question as well about the cost query feature. That one was one that a community member raised, and we created an issue tied to that where you can track all of the responses and plans for fixing that 07, that issue on cost query. I think the last question I see here is that when a good wallet is made, I'm actually not sure I understand what that question is. I'll mention, we've got a lot of exciting wallets with BRD and others who have come into the market in recent weeks. And we track all of that on our website, where you can find out the different third-party wallets, how to access them, what they provide from a software or hardware perspective.
Add to that, they also are doing account creation if you're having any issues with creating an account through the portal. BRD and Atomic wallets are really good. You can create an account instantly through those.
I do see one last question here about TPS. So we've seen a lot of great testing. So I think the latest number that was shared by a third party was the AdsDAX team, which tested up to around 1,400 TPS, I believe, for their application. And that's one of many who's doing that type of testing. So hopefully we can have them publish some, other companies publish some more of their results pretty soon. I see another question, which is which wallet and exchange is most promising. I and most of our team are not in the business of those type of recommendations. So we're very excited to see the growth of the ecosystem of both wallets and exchanges, providing a variety of different, security and business terms, but can't necessarily recommend those off independently ourselves.
And I'll jump in real quick and talk about the bug bounty program that we have. And then if anyone else has questions, just keep dropping them in the Q&A box and we'll continue to answer them after that. So as Donald mentioned, we've open sourced the Hedera services codebase under an Apache 2 license. And we welcome and encourage members of the community to review and contribute to the network services codebase. If you find a non-sensitive bug or an issue in any of the Hedera Network Services code, you can open up a new issue to report it or submit a pull request to fix that bug yourself within the Network Services GitHub repo. And if you have found something that is deemed highly sensitive, we've created a bug bounty program that rewards in HBARs, and this sort of encourages the discovery and reporting of any vulnerabilities that are found. So if you find one, send an email to security@hedera.com with a detailed description of what you found. for bugs of that nature, it's a minimum of $1,000 reward in HBAR, and there's no maximum right now. And then, of course, if you have a new feature request, something that you'd like to see in addition to what we're providing, there are the Hedera improvement proposals, and that program continues to exist. And we're always checking in and engaging with the community about features that they'd like to see. So we strongly recommend submitting your feature requests there, and that's also in the GitHub repo.
Great. And in terms of contact, you can generally ask any questions in the variety of Discord channels is probably the best bet to get a response, and get a hold of our team as well, even if you need to ask for myself. Brady, I think, could you just reiterate the bug reporting email one more time? I think there was a request for that as well.
Yeah, if you find a sensitive bug, security@hedera.com.